Our next speaker today joins us from Fort Eustis, Virginia. Miss Valerie Helms, who by the way is not spelling her last name correctly, is the Assistant Functional Chief Representative of the Department of the Army Career Program 32, which is the civilian career field for Department of the Army civilians who are serving as training, capability, or doctrine developers. She had a remarkable career in the military, retiring as a Chief Warrant Officer 3.
Sometimes folks are hesitant to step up, they just need a little push or a little pull. And then to make my final point, I'll use the same two people I mentioned above, Staff Sergeant Henson and Ms. Mrczkowski. Although we were never in a formal mentorship program, they were both role models for me. Ms. Mrczkowski could sit through a very tense meeting full of conflict, and you would never know that she was upset. And I remember we left one, and I said, I can't believe you just sat there and listened to that and you didn't even react. And she said, you never let them see how you feel because then they have the power. And that was one of the traits that she had that I needed because I show my emotions pretty easily. The other thing they did was they allowed me to talk to them about my weaknesses, and I wasn't afraid that they would hold that against me. And then when we talked about it, they not only gave me candid feedback, they gave me some recommendations for improvement. At times, I think they saw something in me that I probably didn't see myself, and if they hadn't encouraged me and helped me build my confidence, I might not have achieved any success at all. So the fifth point for me was you need to find role models and mentors, and I know that you just talked about that as well. Okay, so in closing, in my opinion, you need to set a goal, and your goal might not be what other people think your goal should be. It may not be about prestige or power or money. It may be something as simple as personal satisfaction. And I know for me, loving what I do is important. I stayed GS11 for a significantly long period of time, even though I was getting daily phone calls saying you need to go try to get promoted, you're making our intern program look bad. But you know, you have to love what you're doing. Then the second thing, you have to develop solid products. You have to work hard and make sound decisions to build your professional reputation. We all know those folks who have a laundry list of schools and professional development opportunities, but then you look at their experience and there's nothing there. So you have to take what you learn through training and education and development, but then you have to apply it at some point to show folks that you can do the work. So learn something new every day, and not just from leaders. I work with a very small team, 3 junior civilians, and I can't tell you how many times I look up, and I can always tell when they have a good idea because they'll stand in the doorway and they'll almost shuffle. They're so excited to tell me the idea. Knowing that as soon as it's out of their mouth, they're going to get tasked to do it. But the ideas come from all directions. So take risks, seek opportunities, find your niche or your passion, encourage other people to bring out their talents, seek out mentors, and then you should end up, if all goes well, with a career that you love. Thanks so much.
Valerie, thanks again for joining us today, and we really appreciate your insights with the different careers that you've had, not only as a non-commissioned officer and then as a warrant officer, now as a Department of Army civilian. You should really consider writing a book because there's just a lot of experience in there. But we really appreciate you sharing it with us, and we look forward to also being able to ask you some questions here in the panel in just a little bit.
Just don't ask for my time on the 12K road.
It might come to you a shame, but we want you to have a coin box.
Thank you.
And again, thanks for joining us today. But this time we're going to go ahead and open up the forum to the audience for any questions that you may have.
Please don't reach out. Okay, my question's for Colonel Dominguez, ma'am. I just wanted to know what barriers you face coming up in the military as a woman, and are there still some barriers that you face today being the senior leadership woman on the installation?
So as Mayor Tomlinson said, you know, it's not always immediately obvious when you're there, but sometimes during, you know, you reflect back and you can see some things. But one of the examples, and why I am not still enlisted, or why I didn't stay enlisted, actually is one of those such barriers. When I was a young specialist, I competed for and I won Soldier of the Year for Europe, all of Europe. And went down and had all of the sergeants major there with me, and they were all congratulating me, saying, "Great job, good job." And then one of them said, "Young lady, what is it that you want for your career?" And a naive young lady said, "I want to be Sergeant Major of the Army." And the room went silent. I had no real idea at that time why the room went silent. And, but then after a few moments, you know, they shuffled me off the stage, and this other sergeant major came up and he put his arm around me and said, "Young lady, I hate to tell you this, but you will never be Sergeant Major in the Army." And so he said, "The Sergeant Major of the Army is always an armor or an infantry NCO, and that requires you to be a male, which you will never be." I was devastated, actually, and so I kind of had been toying with other things and maybe what did I really want, but that clinched it for me. And so I remained in the Army one more year as an enlisted soldier. And then as I was driving to get my savings bond, the colonel said to me, "Have you ever thought of becoming an officer?" I said, "Well, yes, sir, I have." And so then I kind of went on that path. And so sometimes, you know, when the horse you're riding on is no longer taking you somewhere, you get on a different horse. But that was just one scenario, and quite frankly, I think that one of the lessons that we all still struggle with as women is how we're perceived as leaders. And I think, you know, all of the speakers made really, really good points, and I love listening to Becky and Valerie and Mayor Tomlinson. Really, really good points. The one thing that I think all of us need to do is be aware of the labels that are applied to women and only to women. You never hear of a little boy in the sandbox, if he takes charge, he's a natural born leader. The little girl in the sandbox who's taking charge is bossy. The woman who takes charge is abrasive. The man who takes charge is forthright. And we as women apply these leaders to these labels to each other. And I think we need to be aware of that and monitor ourselves. Just the other day, we hear each other say, "Oh, don't cry like a girl. Don't cry like a girl." And you probably hear it in Ranger School all the time. Don't cry like a girl. And don't run like a girl. Don't throw like a girl. Why is that an insult? And the other day we were having a lesson in the hospital, and the two male instructors who were excellent instructors, they were being complimented on how well they worked together. And they said, one of them said, "Yes, we're like a marriage, but he's the wife." I thought, why is that an insult? And we do these things and be aware of these things. And I think that's one thing that we have to continually be aware of as women and about other women. And because sometimes we're our own worst enemies. And so I think that's something that we have to be aware of. Sorry for taking so long.
Thank you, everyone. And I actually have a question for the panel in its entirety, because we have the perspective of the federal civilian workforce, the military and the civilian workforce. But under the theme of leadership and mentorship, I was curious if you have identified characteristics in the people that you mentor, or the people that you work with that are junior to you. What really stands out in terms of those characteristics that identify leaders and identify those people that you value in the organizations that you work for?
I won't try to list all of them, but I would start by saying action-oriented. We call it in our organization having a sense of urgency about something, and another way to say it is we don't hold prayer meeting over things. We want people to get stuff done, and so that's one. Another is values-based leadership. We want people to do things. Teresa talked about it. You do things for the right reason, or what are your motivations? And so that's important in our organization. And I'll lift up those two, and then I'm going to let others talk. But if there are some gaps, I'll come back in.
Thinking through the four folks that I listed as folks that I feel like I'm a mentor to, one of the sort of consistent themes is back to one of the speakers said, the people that stretch me, that are out there pushing the envelope and are thinking big thoughts and are doing things that stretch me as a person. And so it feels like it's a mutual sort of relationship between me as a mentor and them as a mentee. At least are some of the folks that I've picked out as folks that I've mentored.
So people I enjoy leading, I guess that's really kind of the people I enjoy leading, are people who are action-oriented, people who are able to spot problems and not just complain about the problem, but say, I have a solution, I have a way to fix it. So that's that. But also, as a leader, I really value people who are able to stand up and say, I don't think that we're going in the right direction. Every leader needs the little boy or girl who is willing to say, the emperor has no clothes on. And I really enjoy that in the people I lead. And then finally is the leader who's able to grab others and pull them and get them onto their train. And those are the people I enjoy working with and leading.
I tend to be very performance-based, so I look for quality products. I think a lot of folks focus in one area on professional development. They get all the training, but then they can't apply it. So critical thinking is very important. Self-motivation, to piggyback off some of the others, when they identify an issue, don't just come to me and hand the problem to me and put it in my lap. I want you to come with some recommendations or at least some ideas. And then in the Army, I think it's important for soldiers and civilians to live by Army values. So I look for someone who's able to team and negotiate with others and incorporates leadership and integrity, honesty, all those things that we look for as people into their performance.
I have a question for Colonel Fivecoat. So with regards to female integration, as these young females are graduating BOLIC or transferring over, re-branching into infantry combat arms, what would you say your grand advice would be to these male military leaders who are about to accept them into their formation? So what would be the biggest advice you would give them as far as mentoring females?
Yeah, that's a good, very good question. So I guess one of the things that I've talked about to some of the commanders that are going to have the groups that have the first women infantry and armor officers in them, which is a brigade in the 82nd Airborne Division and a brigade in 1st Cav. And I'm actually supposed to do a VTC with the 1st Cav guys tomorrow. First off, you got to make sure you pick the right organizations. Because we had 31 women that worked for us. Some of the companies, I took it from the approach of, hey, look, I've worked with women for the last 20 years. I figured everyone would take the women, the observer advisors, and put them to work on any task that they had. But some of our subordinate organizations chose to only put them against gender issues. The companies that did really well, and the one, my favorite company was Charlie Company, 4th RTP, accepted them in, put them immediately to tasks, and gave them all kinds of tasks, not just gender integrated tasks. And so I came off of that going, hey, you've got to have the right commander and first sergeant, and you really got to look and talk to those folks beforehand, because even if they may be passive resistors or they may not be totally on board with the idea, and you got to find the right company and the right battalion that's ready to take that on and do it, because it's groundbreaking and it's new and it's different. And like I said, words matter. All those things that in this process, as it's new and we work our way through it, is there. I started out in West Point in 1989, which is 9 years after the first woman graduated from West Point. West Point still had gender integration issues 9 years later. I try to tell everyone, hey, look, this is a 20-year process. We all have to accept that this is a 20-year process of the integration piece. You're an MP, the MPs have been integrated for now 20, 30, 40 years, and I suspect you still have some problems, but they aren't going to be as big as the infantry and armor community as this stuff opens. And so we just got to understand it's a 20-year process. There's going to be, like Becky said, there's going to be some bumps, and we just got to understand them and be ready to deal with them as leaders. But the biggest thing is finding the right organization, I think, that's ready to do that. And it's got to be, for us, it had to be the right commander and first sergeant and the right battalion commander and command sergeant major as we do this for the initial piece.
Yes, my name is Master Barnes. I just have a quick question. So I just enjoyed my very first 12 weeks of maternity leave after having 4 of only 6, which was fantastic. I'm glad it got changed. But as a leader, that's where I get torn. Because once you put this suit on, when you have your females step out and you have to plan your whole organization about someone being gone for that long, not only on the leave but coming back. As we prepare for the female integration, how do we teach the females that, as we, unfortunately, now I think we're kind of putting ourselves in a position where we really have to plan having these kids. Because once we get them 19 series and them tanks, and they're qualified, if one person steps out, that whole tank crew is down. It's uncertified. So I guess, how do we really plan, for that? What do we tell, the females coming up now, without letting it be like you have to have permission? You understand what I'm asking?
So I have 4. So I have 4 kids, and I was doing that while I was going through through medical school, and then as a faculty physician. And so while I was going through medical school, I didn't even get 6 weeks. I didn't even take 6 weeks because I would have been put behind. So first of all, the 12 weeks is incredibly, incredibly valuable to allow women that time to bond and to, I'm going to say a dirty word now, breastfeed their infants, so that they can have healthier infants and also to get their own mental health and things back on track. Because it's really hard to leave a newborn at 4 weeks or 6 weeks. It's really, really hard. It's probably hard at 12 weeks as well. But what we tell them is to take care of your baby. In the hospital, we've been dealing with gaps like that for a long, long time. We call it PROFIS deployments, and they happen. Sometimes it's predictable and sometimes it's not, and we manage. And I think we're going to manage. We're going to be fine. We relocate, we reassign. If the tank crew is deploying, we take somebody who's not deploying and we reassign them. But we have got to recognize that healthy families, the Army needs to live what it says. Healthy families make for healthy soldiers. Healthy families make for healthy soldiers.
I think one other thing is, you also have to make sure your male soldiers take their paternity leave.
Yep.
You know, because what is it now? Is it 2 weeks right now?
Just 10 days.
10 days. But you got to make sure the male soldier takes that time as well, so they're part of the family too. Because if you're having a double standard where the male soldier doesn't do that and the women
Absolutely.
take the 12 weeks, we're going to have issues.
I had a question. Question for Becky. In your career with Synovus, have you had to change your leadership style as the millennials come in? Has that been a challenge at all?
Well, we are, I wouldn't say, haven't had to change. I would say we are changing as we understand more and more about the unique approaches that millennials typically have to the workplace and how they view their careers and their willingness to accept mobility. One of the things we've talked about here today, but they are mobile between companies, and the notion of going and spending your career or years in a career at one place is really not, I wouldn't say foreign, but it is, they're not tied to that as how to develop in their career. So they're hopping around a lot. They are very focused on what kind of a company they are working for and what are the values of that company. And so I think we're learning to communicate with them a little bit differently. Individual business unit managers, Wendy oversees an awful lot of training around effective leadership, change management, and so we're learning on the fly. Banking is a traditionally very conservative industry, and so and our own company is not as heavily weighted with entry-level millennials as many other industries are. But frankly, we see that as something that we need to improve on, because millennials are, very, very important in the workplace and the skill set and attributes that they bring. So we actually are trying to recruit more actively toward that age range.
Thank you.
My question is for Colonel Baco. Excuse me. I can hear the pride that you have in the 3 women that finished the Ranger School, and I was wondering, is there any way you can promote that to the ROTC programs within the community in the high schools? Because I have 3 children that are in the ROTC, and one of them is a female, and she doesn't really want to stay in, and when we go to competitions, all the leaders that you see are all males. And so, like Colonel Dominguez was saying, that we put a lot of labels. This is only a male can do this, and that's what they're seeing. Only males are doing this. So is there something even Army or, just military as a whole is able to put out there to say, hey, we have females that are in these positions, and we have, because until I came here, I didn't even know that females can go through the Ranger School, that those opportunities are available for the females just as well as the males.
Well, I think if you ask Jay and Kristen, they may say that they've been out there a lot, and having followed them on Facebook, they go to a lot of neat events that the Army has taken them to promote the groundbreaking or historic piece of their achievement. I think the biggest thing, and I tried to encourage it earlier, is we need more folks to keep going to Ranger School and graduating. And that would be the biggest thing that keeps the momentum going and keeps encouraging folks to do it. One woman has tried the special forces training. It may be up to 2 right now, but she didn't make it through the selection process. But we just have to keep the momentum going that these opportunities are out there. You know, Kristen Grice was the first woman to transfer into the infantry and was the first female infantry officer. She'll be leaving to go to Fort Bragg here very soon from Fort Benning. She's working out at the ARTB right now, but she'll move over there and start working. But as I said earlier, it's a 20-year process, and so as more and more women make these accomplishments and move out there, it will continue to grow. But we're at the seedling stage right now, and we gotta keep working at it.
I think this is another area where we as women can be cognizant of how we acculturate girls in our society. I just saw, speaking of Facebook, I just saw this little video clip on Facebook, and it was a little Australian girl. She was 7 years old, and she was upset because she was in the clothing section of her local Australian version of Walmart or whatever it was, and there were 3 women's t-shirts, or little girls' t-shirts, and 3 boys' t-shirts, and the little girls' t-shirt said, "I feel fabulous, looking awesome, and hey," and the boys' t-shirts said, "Hero, dream big, go for the adventure." And she was upset. She said, "Why is this a girl's shirt and why is this a boy's shirt? And why are we encouraging girls to be preoccupied with their looks and how pretty they are or sweet they are, and not going for the dream and being adventurous?" And one of the shows that I think right now is on television that is really showing that it's not about the genetics, it's about the training. And I love this show, is the American Ninja Warrior, or the American Ninja. That show. So clearly, if you're only 5'2", you're going to have some trouble on the jumping spider. Who's seen this show? Okay? If you're only 5'2", you've really got to jump up that trampoline to get far into that thing so that you don't fall off this jumping spider. But the women who've been on this show have proven it's about training. It's not about the genetics that they have. It's all about training. And it's all about the mindset that they enter the game with. And that's what we've got to be aware of now is, are we still encouraging our little girls to look pretty and be sweet while we're encouraging our little boys to dream big and go for the adventure? And if only I were 20 years younger, Dave, I tell you. I mean, but you know, the adventure of Ranger School and Special Forces, we got to encourage them, you know, go for the adventure, dream big. And it starts at a young age when we start acculturating that.
Well, thanks again to all of our panelists for providing some more thought and for being able to answer our questions. As we get ready to close out, I'd just like to invite Colonel Fodcoat to come up here and provide some closing remarks.
All right, well, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating in the first ever Fort Benning's Women's Leadership and Mentorship Forum. We're wrapping this up slightly early. You see it's before 5 o'clock, but the real intention was to give you more opportunity to continue building your network, continue talking to the folks that are here, and taking advantage of going out in the hallway and grabbing another cup of coffee and talking to some of the great leaders that were up here today. We appreciate, once again, the speakers today for coming in and sharing their insights, and everyone here for joining us today. Please stay in touch with Crystal. We are looking forward to running another one of these very soon, and we'll continue to develop this and continue it to grow this organically, as someone brought up there a little bit before. Thanks everyone, and please join us for a little bit of social time.